KTRK-TV, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is KTRK-TV.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
KTRK-TV.
I have you loud and clear.
Hi, Scott. It's Kevin Quinn. How you doing?
Doing good, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Let's talk a little bit about your mission this time so far. How are things different?
You know, it's interesting. When I got on board the space station, the one thing I noticed that was different than when I got on board last time is that I was much more comfortable here. You know, it's really amazing how your body remembers the environment, how you move around well, just how your body systems, remember being up here. So that was different in a good way. I was more comfortable. But also a lot of things were the same. You know, it was interesting seeing how the space station, by and large, does not look like it aged 4 years since I was here last, and everything's looking pretty good.
A mission like this for a year in space, do you have to take necessarily a different psychological approach to this?
Yeah, I do. You know, when I was here last time on a 6 month or around a 6 month flight, it's almost the type of thing where you can kind of see the end from the beginning, and you think about, well, I got through this month, and you got 4 or 5 more to go. I don't think that way now, and I think it's critical to me being able to function and work up here for a long period of time. I just try to have the mindset that this is where I live now, and someday in the future, long in the future, I'll leave. But between now and then, what's important is for me to pace myself, to get enough rest, to get enough exercise, and because I'm in this for the long haul.
What are you missing most at this point, Scott, back home?
Yeah, you always miss, I think what everyone misses the most is the human interaction you have on Earth with, your family, people you love, your friends. Even though we all get along great and we like each other, there's not a whole lot of variety of people up here. It's same people all day, every day. And so you miss the variety of that on Earth. You also miss the weather. I know you've been having some bad weather in Houston, and, I really feel for you guys down there. It's really unfortunate, the tragedy and the loss of life and, property, and that's occurred. But when you're in this environment, and it's a closed environment, and there's no breeze, there's no, smell of nature, there's no going outside, walking around, experiencing the rain, although I know a lot of people in Houston would like to not experience the rain for a while. That is also something that we miss.
Now, what's it like? I know you've sent a lot of amazing pictures from ISS in your 2 months or so up there so far. What's it like to see all of the floodwaters from your perspective at this point when you look back upon the Houston area?
Well, we don't fly over the same spot over the ground very often, where the timing is right, the lighting's right, the weather's right, and you're awake. Like for instance, right now we're at what's called a high beta angle, so we kind of riding our orbit kind of parallels twilight for a lot of the time, so it's kind of hard to see the ground. Plus, in the case of Houston, with all the rain, with rain comes clouds. So, as you know, we don't have a good view of the ground. So, I haven't had much opportunity to get my eyeballs with a big lens or binoculars on Houston. A little bit, but it's not like we can look out the window often and see the kind of damage that has occurred.
Scott, talk a little bit about the issues with cargo resupply with Progress's failure. how critical is it that food, fuel, supplies all get to you and soon?
Well, the space station has a lot of redundancy, and one area of redundancy is redundant vehicles to deliver cargo. Progress is the only vehicle that delivers fuel, but we have plenty on board to last us until the next one gets up here. And like I said, we have a redundant SpaceX vehicle. Hopefully, Orbital will be flying again soon. HTV, we have one of those in August, so we have a couple of SpaceX vehicles coming up in the near future. HTV, and they'll definitely tide us over until Progress gets flying again, which hopefully will be soon.
Of all the research you've done so far, Scott, what for you personally has been the most interesting?
We do a lot of the human research is pretty interesting. A lot of scans, ultrasounds I was doing yesterday as part of this fluid shifts experiment. Next week I'm going to do those scans, ultrasound scans, while in this Chibis, which is a Russian piece of hardware that the Russians use to mitigate the effects of weightlessness and the fluid shifts, and they use this prior to coming home. So it pulls a vacuum on the lower part of your body, and I'm gonna be the first American to use that device since the Mir days, and we're gonna look at how, with the ultrasound and some other imaging techniques, how the changes in pressure to our brain up here affects the vessels, and what that effect may have on the issues with our vision, for instance. So for me, that's been pretty interesting. A lot of the experiments we do, especially the medical stuff, are human samples, so we don't really see the the immediate effects of those. But that and all the other stuff is really fascinating.
Scott, I know your friend Tom Cook down here says hello, told me to send you his regards, saw that you tweeted a picture of watching Eyewitness News this morning, and we certainly appreciate that as well.
Yeah, we have a good capability to get recorded and sometimes live video up here. So generally when we're having our meals, we can watch the news. I wasn't watching the news this morning. That was actually several weeks ago, but it's great to watch you guys and some other channels as well.
All right. Best to you, and we'll talk to you very soon. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, my pleasure, Kevin. Good talking to you, and hope to see you back on Earth here and within the next year.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the KTRK-TV portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from PRI Science Friday.
Hi there. Station, this is PRI Science Friday. How do you hear me?
I have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. Scott, your longest mission before this was 159 days. How do you compare that mission? Do you have a different mindset that you do for a whole year versus 3-4 months?
Absolutely. So last time I was here a little bit more than 5 months, and like I was saying earlier, when when it's that duration, at least in my case, you can kind of see the end of it from the beginning. I launched in October, got home in March, and you just look at it almost as a month-to-month basis. Get through November, Thanksgiving, December, Christmas, and then the New Year's, and pretty soon it's almost time to come home. this time it's much different. I know I'll come home someday, but from my perspective, I live and work here now. I'm going to be here for a long time, and as such, I just kind of have to pace myself.
We talked to Don Pettit a little while back about the zero-gravity cups and espresso maker. Have you been clinking your coffee cups up there?
We used Don's cup that he designed when we used the espresso maker early on once we had it hooked up. I was surprised at how well it actually worked. I didn't think it would make it seem like you were drinking out of a cup. It's pretty clever design. But we don't have a whole lot of those capsules for the espresso machine, so we haven't used it in a while, and hopefully we will. And Samantha's throwing a cup at me real quick to show you. So here's the cup, and like I said, it's pretty incredible how when you go like this, it actually seems to pour with gravity, even though there's no gravity. But haven't used it much, but look forward to using it again.
We spoke to Julie Robinson from Johnson, and she mentioned something called suction pants. That has to do with how microgravity affects your vision. Have you been able to try them out? Have you noticed that your vision is affected by long-term microgravity?
Well, that's the first I've heard of that term. It could be something that I had not had training on, or something that's going to come in the future. I guess what she's probably talking about is mitigating the fluid shift that occurs. Gravity on Earth pushes a lot of the fluid, out of your head towards your feet, and up here it's just all redistributed. So you generally have a higher pressure in your head, and that's why some astronauts, me included, when they first get up here, they kind of have a puffy head, and that kind of continues. As far as my vision, it seems like my middle vision and distance vision is a little bit better. My reading vision's a little bit worse. It varies from time to time up here. I did have some little bit of structural changes last time, and I'm sure I'll have that this time. And, it's part of the price that some people pay for going up here, and we're trying to understand it better and understand the risks and how to mitigate those risks. And hopefully some of the experiments we're doing on board, even next week, will help us do that.
The Russians had a cosmonaut up there for 14 months. Did you talk to him? Did he give you any hints or tips about what to expect?
I did not talk to him. I don't think I've ever met him, but I did talk to Vladimir Titov, who spent about a year in space on the Mir space station, and he gave me one bit of advice, and it's just like, it was basically just pace yourself. You're going to be there for a long time, and just try to keep a good balance of work and rest, and you'll do just fine.
We're speaking to your brother Mark today also. Now, which one of you has the better right stuff? Is there a sibling rivalry in space?
That would be me.
Why am I not surprised?
Sure. Hey, but I'm sure. No, I'm sure he would say the same thing. We are. And I'm just kidding around. I have no idea. We're similar in a lot of ways, different in others. We're, naturally competitive people, but not competitive with, between each other. Our experiences in space have been a little bit different, but we both recognize that just having the ability to fly in space once is a real privilege, and it's just really been an incredible thing that we could share together. This great experience, and both of us having flown 4 times is really hard to believe.
I know he's on the ground here comparing what happens to him during your time up there in space. Have you two noticed any differences already that you can compare?
Well, most of that comparative research is with samples of blood and urine and other things, and cognitive ability, some cognitive experiments using MRIs and structural changes within our bodies and the chemistry of our bodies, our genetics, things like that. So there's stuff that you don't see that the researchers at some point will publish papers on, for instance, how my DNA looked one way before flight and how his compared before flight, and then maybe how mine changed over time while I was here, where his, in a certain area stayed the same. But that's not stuff that we can see at this point, but, stuff that's very important nonetheless.
We asked our listeners what questions they had for you, and we have a couple of them from Twitter. I'm going to see if I can share them with you. David Shee wanted to know if the likelihood of infection is higher on Earth or on ISS, and is there an effect on your microbiome? And are you measuring that too?
Yeah, so one of the studies we're doing with my brother is a microbiome study, how our microbiome changes. And the microbiome, for people that might not be familiar with it, is, all this bacteria that resides within your digestive system. And apparently, from what I understand, there's more of those cells that aren't you than there are of your own human cells. So it's, it's critical to our physiology. It's very important, and it does change when we're in space. And we're comparing that, the changes in my microbiome with my brother's over the period of time that we're here. And as getting back to the first part of your question about infections, our immune system generally is depressed up here for, I'm not sure why. Maybe someone knows exactly why, but we actually are studying that. So in some respects, I would guess you would be, a little bit more prone to certain types of infections, things that we have on board here that can infect you. But for instance, there's no cold virus up here, the flu virus, things like that. Certain types of bacteria, we don't have them on the space station. Therefore, people generally don't get sick like you might on Earth, at least not very often.
All right, Scott, thank you very much for taking time to be with us today, and good luck to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, and it was great talking to you today.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
And thank you, KTRK-TV and PRI Science Friday. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.